Hey, this is Lisa from A Knit Sheep. How is everybody doing? I am doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be kind of developing a new kind of format for my YouTube channel. So, this is something that's kind of going to evolve over time. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. I don't even have a name. So, if you have a good name idea, I'm willing to hear about it in the comments. But what I'd like to do is explore learning different things in the needle arts. Mostly knitting for me, but there will be some crochet. There may be other things too because I'm the type of person I like to try new things. And I'm not, let's say, 100% tied to the outcome. For me, the adventure is in the actual trying of things. So we're going to be doing some of that. I will be sharing resources for, learning how to do things better, and I will also be sharing progress on my projects, and I'm not editing that out. Mistakes will happen. And if you're a knitter or crocheter, you just rip it out and go again. I'm going to be doing about 13 episodes of this show, whatever we're going to call it. I don't have a name yet, like I said. And then I'll probably take 2 weeks in between, maybe three, and then I'll come back with another 13 episodes. So you'll know what the schedule is, and I'll let you know when I'm going to break between seasons. I love that idea. I'm going to have seasons. So let's get going. What I'm working on right now, actually, I have two projects going right now. I'm only going to talk about one today because I wanted to really get into the nitty gritty of how I'm working this. I am working on the Alaska sweater by Camille Descoteaux. And I'm sure I didn't get her name exactly right, but I think close enough is good enough at this point. I'll be putting links to the pattern in the description bar below. So this is what I have so far. And I'll include a picture of what it's going to look like finished. I'll just insert that in later. But one of the nice things about this sweater is that I feel like the pattern is flexible so that you can really make it what you want it to be. I found something caught up in my yarn, so I was picking it off. You made the sweater what you want it to be. So in her original design, it was a super crop sweater with what she's calling 7/8 sleeves, so the sleeves don't come all the way down to the wrist. I'm still in the air about exactly where I want my sleeves to stop. I don't know if I'm going to do mine as short as hers, and I'm definitely making the sweater a little bit longer. So her sample, the body length is 11 inches, and mine is going to be 13.5 inches. And there is color work along the bottom of the sweater. And I just started the first couple of rows of the color work. Now, the thing with this particular color work chart is that there are huge gaps between the color changes when you first start. Things get much closer together, as you go along. But when you begin, it's one lonely stitch here and there. And I really didn't like, when I swatched it, I really didn't like how it affected my fabric. So note to self, I'm going to have like my swatches and things ready before I get started so I don't have to dig in my bag. So I did a swatching around. This is actually my third swatch. The first two swatches I did were just to figure out what needle size I wanted to work in. What kind of fabric would I get. So here they are. I just did those little 4-inch swatches that everybody tells you about. So this is one. Just a little 4-incher. Not quite 4-incher because this was on the smaller needle. Let's see if I can remember. I don't think I bothered to mark this one. Oh, here it is. This is on US 3 with 3 knots in it. And I think this is the one I actually went with. And as you can see, they're still gonna curl. I did soak them, but I didn't like pin them out to flatten them at all because I didn't want my gauge to be, you know, significantly different than it would have been at otherwise. And I ended up going with a US 4. There we go. So once I did these 2 swatches, this just helped me establish, okay, what needle size. And I think that's going to be the best use for the tiny 4-inch swatch. It's just a quick way to say, hey, is this needle going to work? But my real swatch, as I was saying, but my real swatch is 8 inches around. And I also work some of the color work chart. And it looks fairly smooth, right? I'm not really mad at it, but one of my pet peeves in color work is I don't like when there's little blips that peep through. And I was concerned that with these long stretches, you see this first stitch? There are no other stitches until you get to the next motif, you know, the next color work stitch. And that's a good long stretch in between. And I did it on the swatch, just traditional color work by catching the floats every few stitches. But I really didn't like the effect that it had on my fabric because my fabric is way less flexible in the color work portion than in the regular knitted portion, just way less stretch. So I was thinking, okay, let me try a different technique. I had learned about this technique a while back and I hadn't gotten a chance to do anything with it. I had actually planned to do socks with it because it would give me the stretch back. So I decided to try a Ladderback Jacquard for the color work section of this sweater rather than doing just your basic stranded knitting. And the nice thing about Ladderback Jacquard is that you can go back and forth between stranded knitting and Ladderback. So that's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to start out my motif when it's really, really spread out like this, Ladderback. And as the stitches get closer together towards the end of the motif, I will just switch back to just normal color work. So let me show you. I just started it yesterday. So I only have a couple of rows, Ladderback style. I literally have 2 rows. Now what I'm doing here is creating an extra stitch that lives on the back side of the work, and that's how I'm catching the floats. And I'm doing it, I'm stretching my floats out a little bit every 6 to 7 stitches because it works with my numbers. And as you see, everything is still very, very flexible because what's happening is instead of being caught in the work, I'm going to have almost a separate layer of fabric behind on the back side of my work, and that's where the floats are living. And then when you turn it around, there's no show through at all. So all you see is the color work. I'm very happy with how that's going. And I don't have to think about, because the other thing you want to consider when you're doing floats is you don't want to stack the floats one on top of the other because you'll definitely get blips thrown through if you do that. So if you catch the float every 5 stitches on this row, you might want to catch it every 3 stitches on the next row, and then every, I don't know, 4 stitches on the row after that, just to keep staggering those catches. And this way I don't have to think about that at all. As a matter of fact, I will just build in the same spot because I have my Jacquard stitch. Let me see if I can show it to you up close. I think I might be able to. There we go. See how this stitch is actually on the back of the fabric? That's what I'm doing. I'm creating stitches on the back of the fabric rather than on the front of the fabric like these two. So that's my main modification to how you could work the sweater. You could also work the sweater if you don't mind doing intarsia. You could also do the trees. That's what the motif is. It's like a row of trees. You could also do the trees as intarsia, and you need to have, you know, its own yarn source for each tree as you go around the bottom of the sweater. The trees also exist on the cuff of the sweater, and I kind of like the different placement of the motif rather than it just being up around the neck. I like that a lot. So I was very excited, and this is actually going to be my holiday sweater for this year. I didn't want it to be super Christmassy. I wanted it to be more winter solstice, you know, and I thought with the woodsy colors and the trees, it would be just perfect. The other modification I did on the sweater is when I measured my gauge, I knew that my sleeve would come out an inch too tight for what I would want for the upper arm. So I added an inch to the upper arm by just, instead of just, you see how I have my raglan line here? Instead of just doing my regular raglan increases, when I got an inch away from the end of my raglan increases, I just added an extra increase on every increase row. So I was just, and on the sleeve side. So I was just increasing the width of the sleeve, not increasing the width of the chest of the sweater. And I'm hoping by doing that, I will have enough room for my upper arms, and I won't have a lot of extra fabric right up in here. So let me demonstrate what I mean by the sleeve side. So this is the bust side of the sweater, and this is the sleeve side of the raglan increase. So I added an extra increase down towards here as I went along. So we'll see. I might have gone a little overboard on that, so we'll see if it's too big. If it's too big, I can just disappear some stitches right quick. But I know for a fact it will fit, because the other reason I'm doing a top-down sweater is because it's easy to try on. So what I did do was I took it off the needles, put it on some waste yarn, and tried it on. And I think that is something that knitters in particular need to start doing more regularly. Even if you're knitting a sweater in pieces, when you have, as you accumulate those pieces, do your best to try them on, because it really sucks not to know that the garment you're making doesn't really fit until the bitter end. And you know, it's very, very disappointing, and I don't think anybody really wants to go through that. So try it on as you go. Measure your gauge. I have a friend who, she did do a swatch and she did measure her gauge, but once she saw that she got the 4 inches, she never really did anything else with that gauge swatch. Oh, that's the other thing I want to tell you guys. When you are making your swatch, you really do want to block that swatch the way you're going to block the garment, and then take your gauge from the block swatch. Now this yarn is Berroco Pixel, that's the colorful yarn, and the solid color yarn is also Berroco yarn. It's Berroco Ultra Wool DK, Pixel DK, and Ultra Wool is also a DK. They are both superwash wool. So, and both of the labels said machine wash, tumble dry, low. And I think it says machine wash delicate. So that's exactly what I did to the swatch. I put the swatch in the washing machine on the delicate cycle, and I put the swatch in the dryer also on the delicate cycle. And I really loved the beautiful coherent fabric I got out of that process. And let me show you this other swatch because there's a real difference. This is the swatch on the same needles, and all I did was I soaked this swatch before I measured it. You see how it's still kind of open? And this one is not an open fabric, so I kind of blocked it appropriate for the particular fiber. And now what I'm not saying is do that with every yarn. You really have to look at the washing instructions, and I'm not even saying you have to soak. I mean, this is going to be radical sounding, but you don't even have to soak every swatch. Sometimes a good ironing with a little bit of steam is going to be all that requires. So really experiment with your swatches, and if you are not sure what to do, make a couple of swatches. Soak this one, iron that one, and maybe throw this one in the washing machine if it says that it's washable. And that will tell you what's the best way to block your garment. And you're going to see the future. You're going to see what's going to happen to your garment once you wash it. Oh, I think you might have noticed this here. Now that's the cast. I didn't even cast off really. I just ran a piece of thread through my open stitches on that end, and I cast on with the invisible cast on. Because what I wanted to do was kind of mimic this piece of fabric coming from the middle of the sweater. It wouldn't be too close to the cast on because your cast on stitches are often, the gauge will often be different from the body stitches. And I didn't want a slightly tighter than the body stitches cast off changing my gauge either. So I have an open cast on and an open cast off, so I don't actually make a different tension. And I measured the entire swatch, not just a few inches in the middle. And I went with measuring the entire swatch, and I just measured the circumference of it all the way around. I went with measuring the entire swatch because that way if I had, it would give me the average of what my stitch gauge was. So if I had a couple of stitches that were a little bit bigger, or a couple of stitches where I was watching a very tense moment in my show and I tightened up a bit, I would get a more average reading of the gauge I was working with. So I ended up getting 5.5 stitches to the, no, 5.56 stitches to the inch. And you want to go out to at least the second decimal point. The third is even better, because then you're going to get as precise as you can a reading of your gauge, and it's going to be over the total number of stitches in your swatch. So you want a big swatch, and use your swatch to practice things. I practiced the color work, and that made me change the way I wanted to do my color work. So if there's a technique you're not familiar with, you can use your swatch to try it out on just a few stitches, rather than, you know, getting to it like, oh, I didn't know I was gonna have to do that, because I've gotten caught out there like that, like, oh, really? What is that? So big swatch, wash it the exact same way you plan to wash that garment. So I'm gonna be working on this for the next few weeks, because I wanted to start my holiday sweater deep in the summer, because I didn't want to actually not have one, because that's my usual method, like, oh, it's the holiday times, I'd love to have a holiday sweater, but you know, it's December 3rd and I wouldn't have time for that by that point. So I'm also going to show you something else. Be right back. Hey. So one of the questions I get a lot in the yarn store is, how do I pick this color? What colors do you think go together well? Well, one of the easiest things to do is to use basic color theory, and using colors on the opposite side of a color wheel will give you, a nice balance of color. So that's the easiest way to do it. Um, what you can also do is test out color selections before you actually start knitting, because a knitted swatch takes much longer a time, or much longer time than drawing a little swatch on a piece of paper. So that's what I did here. As you see, this does not have to be some great work of art. It doesn't have to be shaped like a sweater. It can be if you want it to be. But what I did was, when I narrowed down my colors choices to like 2 or 3, because you see by the time I colored in the purple trees, I knew I didn't want purple trees. So I abandoned that one. I was really choosing between this shade of pixel and this shade of pixel. And this one leans more to the blue and orange, which are on the opposite sides of the color wheel, by the way. And this one leaned more towards green and yellow. So what I did was, I just kind of mimicked the stripes in the fabric of the sweater, and I tried it out on paper first. And for me, that was enough to help me see, oh yeah, I think that'll be good. And I ended up going with the green and brown that I like. Now, what did I do this with? I use colored pencils, but you can use whatever you have on hand. If you have some crayons on hand, if you have magic markers, whatever your favorite medium is. But I thought this deep brown would give me plenty of contrast while still kind of staying within the color theme of the sweater. So give that a try on your next project. Draw the shape of it or draw a square, it doesn't matter what it is, and really just try out the colors. And that way it'll give you a little tool for visualizing the end product before you even do that first swatch. And then if you want extra points, you could also swatch for color. That'd be kind of fun. So I told you guys in the beginning I'm working on a hat, and my sweater is my longer term project. My hat's almost done. I think I have one panel left to knit on it, and then I'll sew it up. So I'll be talking about that probably next time. I am kind of ruminating on a project I would like to do. I fell in love with a shawl from the last trunk show we had. Well, not the last trunk show, the one before. The Angora Lace from Kelbourne Woolens. Really beautiful shawl. Can't think of the name now. Angora Lace. Angora from Kelbourne Woolens. Yeah. Sorry, I just looked at Angora Lace. So there we go. I don't remember the name of the shawl at the moment, but I will have that in the notes, and I'll probably put it in somewhere. But I really liked it. I really liked that it was a smaller triangular piece, and I liked that it was it had lace on the bottom and just a straight shot of stockinette for the rest of it, and you're working from the bottom, which is the widest part, to the top. So it's going to be one of those projects that feels like it goes fast, because each row after you do the lace section is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter till it tapers to a very narrow point. The only thing I was like not excited about was they did it all in one color. The minute I saw it, I was like, oh, I think I would have loved this if the lace part was in a dark color. So let's move on to our shop segment. In the shop right now, we have, I think our next trunk show is going to be for Universal Deluxe Chunky. Crystal thinks it should be called Chunky Deluxe, but it's called Deluxe Chunky. And it's a really lovely 100% wool yarn in a nice chunky weight. Actually, Mom made a crochet sample for us. this really cute fitted poncho. Ponchos are back and they're better than ever, and they're coming in every format. So you can have the big blanket type ones or more sweaterish. I always think that a poncho with sleeves is more sweaterish than a poncho without sleeve. So you can also have sweaterish ponchos. So you can really take your pick along those lines. Um, do come in and see the new garments. As always, we will be doing a trunk show live on social media, and I think, is that what we have coming up right now? That's our next trunk show. Yeah, shop news. We have made kits for the new Stephen West shawl, and I will pop in some pictures of our kits. I think they're really fun, and one of the things Stephen West was talking about when he did his videos, and I will link to his videos where he talks about the new Shawlography make along. The cast on date, by the way, is October 8th, so you still have plenty of time to get your kits. Is that feel free to mix different yarns, mix different textures, and it's going to just add to the fabulousness of your Shawlography shawl. So what we did was we put together 4 palettes, and all 4 palettes contain a mix of yarns, and you're going to get a mix of fibers in each palette. So some palettes are going to have, let's see, I think I have one of the yarns right behind me. One of our palettes is going to have Angora Lace in it, and this is a superwash and Angora blend, so it's deliciously soft. We also mixed in some Fiber Natura, which is a wool and silk blend. We have some marinated yarns in some of our kits. That is a merino wool, cashmere, nylon blend. So every kit is going to, at every price point, it's going to feel wonderful because we have really beautiful yarns in there. I think the hard part is going to be picking your color palette, because we did a bold color palette called Walking on Sunshine. We did Her Serene Highness, which is a all kind of moody blue palette. We also did neutrals with a pop, and we did an all neutral palette. So I think there's something for everybody, and I think that there's also a price point for everybody. Our kits range from $40 for the entire kit. You'll still have to go buy your pattern though, but $40 for the kit of yarn to $190, just depending on what mix of yarn you wanted to work with. So there's literally something for everybody. Anyway, I think that's it for me today. I will see you guys next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.